So I just want to say hello to people who have joined us. I'm Mickey Maynard. I'm the editor of Culinary Woman, and this is Liz Williams, who's the editor of Tip of the Tongue and also its podcast.
Hello, everybody.
And so tonight, I'm so happy that people were getting great feedback, that people are really enjoying these conversations. Someone said that they enjoy hearing people, professionals in the food business, talk to each other. And, we're both writers, and Liz is a podcaster and obviously founded a museum. So she's got fabulous credentials. I am glad that people are enjoying it. And please give us feedback either during the chat or afterwards. So tonight's topic is restaurants. And the reason that we brought it up is that Liz and I are always texting and phoning each other and comparing notes on the restaurants that we've eaten in, and also the things that we've noticed that are changing in restaurants. And
Mhm.
one of the things that I think is a very touchy subject is the subject of tipping. And I was wondering what you've encountered lately and, how you're feeling about that topic.
Well, I'm dividing tipping now into what's happening at restaurants and tipping at restaurants, and then all of the other ancillary tipping that's still food related, like
Mhm,
stopping at a counter and getting a coffee and being asked if, you want to tip somebody. And it's in the app that they have that you're paying on. So you have to, I mean, they give you the option of no tip, but that's kind of hidden to the side.
mhm,
And I think that, sometimes the thing that people are doing is they're just trying to almost intimidate you into
mhm,
tipping.
mhm,
So, if I could go back in time a little bit, I remember doing an article for Gastronomica magazine, about the Fiore case, which was, a case that came before the Supreme Court, and it was about restaurant tipping. And in that, decision, the court said that they could go that the US, tax service could go to the restaurant and look at their books and figure out what tips should have been,
mhm,
then they would use that to tax the, employees who, of course, always wanted to be paid in cash, so that was just as far as they were concerned, it didn't happen. And, the restaurant didn't worry about it because it was the responsibility of the person earning the money to report it. Well, the responsibility now was going to fall on the restaurant after the Supreme Court case.
mhm, mhm.
And so it changed everybody's attitude toward tipping. And, when I think back on that case and then I look at what's happening now, I just think, "My god, that was so benign compared to all the kinds of craziness that are happening now." Because, I mean, tipping is being enforced by the restaurant. It's I know it perhaps is not fair to not tip your waiter because you got bad food, because the waiter doesn't have anything to do with the food,
Mhm.
but at the same time, um, it's just a big mess. It makes you just see how crazy tipping is, and I lived in Europe for 3 years where there's no tipping.
Right.
And it works fine without tipping. And so the fact that our restaurants don't seem to be able to function without tipping is something that I can't actually figure out.
So there are a couple of different ways to look at this. So both Michigan and Louisiana, where you are tipped wage states. And that
Mhm.
means that owners of restaurants can pay below minimum wage to their employees on the assumption that tips will get them to minimum wage and maybe even more. I think they'd like to make more than that. And then if you work a 40-hour work week and you haven't made the equivalent of minimum wage in your tips, your employer's supposed to pay the difference. And it's
Right.
on the employee to report their tips. It is not on the owner to keep track of the tips. And that is where the problem comes in. In Chicago, they are phasing in phasing out tipped wages, and by 2028 it's supposed to be minimum wage across the board for every employee in any establishment. So the restaurant industry there recently tried to get that rolled back or delayed because they said this is going to hurt us. And the mayor supports phasing out tipped wages. And so there's a big fight in Chicago over that. But one of the things that really bothers me is when you go someplace and you haven't gotten any kind of service. So
Mhm.
you go to Starbucks, although I don't, that's, because they won't give their workers a contract. That's a whole nother subject. But you go to get to Dunkin', let's say, you're
Okay.
getting a brewed coffee, and the brewed coffee is $2. And the screen comes up, and the screen is asking you how much you want to tip for the brewed coffee. And
With
nothing
suggestions.
with
With suggestions.
suggestions. Yeah. So 15, 20, and 25% or custom or no tip. And for me, if they haven't done anything except pull the little nozzle and the coffee goes in the cup and the lid goes on, I would hesitate to tip. I would be reluctant to tip. If it's a constructed drink with 4 or 5 different steps or whatever, and somebody spent 2 minutes fixing it, I might, throw $1 in the tip jar or whatever. But I feel like, I mean, I went and picked up an order at CVS the other day, and there was a tip screen, and I was
Mhm.
picking up like contact lens solution. Why would I tip for contact lens solution? It's a good, it's not a service.
Right,
So I think,
right.
and there's a school of thought, and I would love to hear what you think, that if you can't afford to tip 25%, don't go out to eat. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I do kind of have this standard tip in my head as 20% of food, not everything. I don't think that everything should be tipped that way, at 20%, but I do have that sort of in my head. Um, but I also think that 20% of the food is very different depending on the cost of the food and the type of restaurant. So I could see if you were going someplace and you were paying $150 a person for a meal and whatever you had,
Right.
that a 20% tip would be very, very much more money, but the work done by the waiter wasn't necessarily any different from having, something similar at a different restaurant at $40 a person or $50 a person. So
Mhm.
I do kinda take that into consideration,
Yeah.
when I'm I'm tipping, but I do think 20% is what I learned as a standard tip, so
Mhm.
I don't fight that part of it, but I do fight when I'm gonna give a tip because 'cause I'm on the same page as you are about when no service is rendered, I
Mhm.
don't see why I have to pay a tip.
Yeah, and so just so people know, Liz has had some technical difficulties in Louisiana today, and we kinda duct taped her on the air, so if you see her buzzing up a little bit, please be patient. We know that it's not 100% perfect, but she's here, hooray. Um, you and I were talking before we went on about the extra charges that we're starting
Mhm,
to see
mhm.
in, bills, and I think a lot of this happened during the pandemic.
Mhm.
Health and safety charges, surcharges because prices spiked, that sort of thing. So, what's your view
Yeah.
on all that?
Well, if there's if the menu says market price,
Yeah.
I expect that it's on me to say, "And what is the market price today?" So that I'm not surprised when I get some kind of a charge that you don't know because it's not on the menu. When somebody applies a charge at the end that you didn't have a warning, it's not in the menu, there will be, these charges added to your bill. I really am against that. I'm
Mhm,
totally against that. I think that's just wrong. And, so, I mean, it's almost a bait and switch as far as I'm concerned.
mhm.
You have to at least be given notice on the menu that this would be added to your bill, or
And,
there should be
there was a
posted something.
point, I think, like, post-pandemic where they would put little cards on the table, and
Mhm.
basically say we are adding a charge of 7% to pay for health insurance or whatever, and, they would I was told that if people really objected, they'd take it off, but you're put in the position of saying, "No, I don't wanna pay for healthcare," but on the other hand, it's a cost of doing business. It's
Right,
not it's
and
not really
everybody
my
else.
responsibility, it's the owner's responsibility or the chain's
Right,
responsibility to offer
right,
that. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, it totally. I mean, the whole idea of tipping, I think, and having tipping be part of the pay as opposed to an additional something that people voluntarily do, I think it just has skewed the way the whole restaurant industry views the responsibility of the owner.
Mhm, mhm, and I think also, there's a lot going on. So, we have lost New Orleans, I know, is losing some restaurants. We have
That's right.
lost, especially small places here in Ann Arbor. I just saw a story today on M Live, which is the news service for the state, that a popular donut shop in Ann Arbor was closing. And, you always think if it's popular, why is it closing? It's closing because the rent went up. And, you can only charge so much for a donut. I mean, especially here because we have perfectly good local donuts for $1. And,
Uh-huh.
some of these chains will come in and charge 3.50 and people are like, "I'm not paying
Yeah, forget
3.50
it.
for a
Yeah.
donut." But
Right.
we've had several places go out of business and they do interviews with M Live and they say, "Look, our rent went up, our utilities went up, we've paid for extra security," that kind of thing. And so it's insurance has gone way
Mhm.
up. And the other thing that's gone way up and which is not reliable is the cost of ingredients. And
Right.
I just watched a reel on Instagram from an owner who took people to Restaurant Depot. And for any of our viewers who don't know Restaurant Depot, it's kind of the big wholesale clearinghouse in the restaurant business. So if you need a crate of oranges, you might go to Costco, but you're probably going to Restaurant Depot. If you
Mhm.
need a box of peppers, you go to Restaurant Depot. If you need tomatoes, you go there.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I wrote about tomatoes in the newsletter and how a box of tomatoes is now costing $80. It used to be 35. And things like peppers were $11 and now they're 30. But lettuce has come down, and the tariff situation didn't help at all.
Right.
And so that makes it hard for the owners to do business plan.
Yeah. No, no, I think that that's definitely a real problem. We had the same thing happen to a really older restaurant in New Orleans called the Palace Cafe, which was on
Mhm,
Canal
mhm.
Street,
Yeah.
and, their landlord they came to the end of their lease, and
Mhm.
so for renewal. And they at the landlord even was raising the price because of the improvements made by the restaurant
Oh,
and
that's
saying,
not
"Now
fair.
you
Yeah.
should pay for these improvements,"
Mhm.
which is just ridiculous. And so they're closed,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
it's just there's no alternative really. Um and if everyone just caves, I mean, first of all, you may not be able to cave and financially make it, but if everyone just caves, then the landlord just have all the power.
Right,
So then
right.
I'm sure the landlord is gonna regret what,
Yeah.
he's done.
Yeah, and I think that's a big issue here in Ann Arbor as well, that we have a situation where, and I have to say there's a lot of nostalgia in Ann Arbor for places that are no longer here.
Mhm.
And for whatever reason, the owners decided they couldn't go on, and a lot of times it's family reasons. It's that
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
the couple or the husband or whatever started the restaurant worked there for 40 years, the kids are not interested in
Right.
continuing, and so they just somebody comes along, a developer says, "I'll buy the building," and they're like, "Okay, we'll sell." And it's fine, and we understand why they do it, but it feels like a chunk of the community disappears every
Mhm.
time that happens, and it's happened to me a couple times in the past year or so where places we would take my nephews when they were little kids and places where my mother liked to go and you drive by and it's not there anymore and you just feel kind of a pang that it's disappeared and it's like some of these places nothing's gone in because the rents are so high.
Right.
So that's something that I feel very deeply. I don't know why I feel so personally involved in in restaurants. Why do you think that is? Why do you think restaurants make us so nostalgic?
Well, I don't think all restaurants do, but I think the ones that we revisit again and again, you build up memories and relationships and things just the way you do with other kinds of long-term repeat things,
Mm,
and so it becomes really important to you. If you've gone to a restaurant once and it closes, you can say, "Oh, I'm sorry for the community or the economy of the community," or whatever, but
mhm,
it doesn't just, you know, tear your heartstrings because it's you haven't built up a relationship there, but if you associate it with your mother and with your nephews
mhm.
and your own relationships with the wait staff, that person who says hello every time they see you come in,
Yeah.
and they know what you drink or they know
Mhm.
what you're gonna order or say they'll walk up to you, give you the menu and say, "Don't order this today because it's not fresh," or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
They
People
take care
like
of
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were telling me about the restaurants in New Orleans where people have their favorite waiter, and
Oh,
and
well,
they
yes.
only want a table in that person's section.
Well, in a lot of the old time restaurants like Antoine's or Arnaud's or whatever, the waiters just run around because people just, the waiters are very attached to their customers
Mhm,
too.
mhm.
And if there's no room in their section, it's like, that's too bad. I'll go across the restaurant. I'll do whatever I have to do. And those are people that the waiter's name, the waiter knows your name, um,
Yeah.
people carry on in the next generation with the same waiter because they grow up seeing that waiter, and then they want that waiter when they go to the restaurant with their family. Um, it's very, very common, and the relationships wa are so wonderful when you walk in and the waiter greets you from across the restaurant, and brings your drink to the table before you order it, and it's, very nice.
It is, and I was thinking about the places that I like to go here in Ann Arbor in the Ann Arbor area, and I realize that I tend to go to the same places all the time because I know if I go in, somebody will know me and somebody will greet me by name, and I'll sit down, and I do dine by myself. I usually go out for lunch. I don't really go out for dinner that much, but I will go, and when I go to a place like Zingerman's Roadhouse, I sit at the end of a counter next to the front of the house staff. And so they're next to me and they're seating people and they're looking at the reservations book and all that. But then they come over and talk to me. And then the waiters and the servers will come by and say hello. And then people in the kitchen will wave at me. And it's sort of like I'm not just there to eat, I'm there to interact with all the folks I know that work there. And then I have
Yeah.
a restaurant called Plate Sushi and Chicken, and it's owned by 2 ladies from South Korea, Jane Kim and Esther Kim, and we are now on like, I give them little Christmas gifts, and they give me
Oh,
I
wow.
sit down to eat, and I go home with more food than I've ordered to eat. And then we now have up the street here, there was a Korean market, just a little grocery store called Hyundai, like the car, and
Uh-huh.
they were recently sold to 2 couples, and 2 had owned a food truck, and then the others were friends of theirs. And so these four, I would say they're in their 30s to 40s ish, and they've
Mhm.
taken over the grocery store, and now they have cooks in the back. And they've been having specials. So they had Korean fried chicken sandwich yesterday. They've had wings. They've had bulgogi. They had a special when they opened, and it's called Modu Market. And they had a special when they opened where if you bought $40 worth of groceries, you got a free bento box. You know,
Oh,
so that
wow.
I thought that was a great way to get people in. And so
Absolutely.
their clientele is, I would say, mostly people of Korean background, but Americans,
Huh,
native, not people who came from South Korea to Ann Arbor, but or grew up Korean American, but kind of like half white and half Asian. So and
uh-huh.
probably black people too. I shouldn't rule that out, but not like maybe half Korean, half everybody else. And
Yeah, yeah.
for me, it's I've been watching this show called Chef in My Fridge, which is South
Uh-huh.
Korean, and then it's related to the culinary class wars. And so I'm really starting to attune myself to Korean food, and I can go in there and I can ask a question about perilla oil or pork loin or the beef you buy for bulgogi, and they can answer that question. So I feel
Right.
like
Yeah.
that's really tied together. And the other place I've been going lately is in Canton, and it's called Saj, Saj. And I actually won a gift card there. So they had a drawing during Ramadan, and I just threw my name in, and they called and said, "You've won a $50 gift card."
Oh, that's
Yeah, so I
lovely.
took two of my friends, and we were able to each get lunch and dessert and drinks for the $50. So we had a table full of food. And,
That's
they were so
amazing.
thrilled that I had won this gift card, 'cause they knew I was a familiar person. So for me, it isn't just the food, I guess it's the story. I guess it's the fact that I know the people. I know, Jane lost her mother recently, and right now Esther's in South Korea visiting her family. So they sit down with me and they tell me things, and I'm always happy to hear the stories. And so for me, that's what going to a restaurant is. It isn't just to eat, it's to interact, I guess you would say.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I don't think that's the way most people approach a restaurant
Probably not.
experience.
Probably not. But so I was in kind of keeping in with the whole idea of prices, that sort of thing.
Yes.
I get invited to a lot of collaborative dinners where chefs here in Ann Arbor have visiting chefs come in. And it's kind of a fun way to meet someone new to sample their food. A lot of times it's cookbook authors. But
Uh-huh.
I've noticed that the prices are going up, 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 up. And one of the most recent ones I was invited to was $250, and it did not include a gratuity or wine or beer, whatever drinks you wanted. So you were now looking at probably $300 for a meal in Ann Arbor, which, it's wealthy, but it also has a lot of college students. So we have
Right, right.
restaurants here and restaurants here. So do you
Yeah.
ever go to these types of dinners in New Orleans?
I
Are they
I
held very
have
often?
I have gone to them on occasion, and, I have to say I usually just get invited
Mhm,
instead of having to pay. So, I haven't ever gone and paid.
mhm,
So
mhm.
but I understand. I mean, it's not the way I wanna go out and eat. First of all, I don't eat that much, and so if you've got 7 courses or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
because that's what you're paying for, at some point, it's like, I don't even want to eat that,
Mhm,
and but I have seen, in New Orleans where restaurants are having, um, prix meals and where you go and, it's a tasting menu,
mhm.
and if you make a reservation there, you have to pay over the phone
Oh, wow. So
so
you're
that
purchasing a ticket,
you
basically.
get a ticket. Exactly, because
Mhm.
they've had so many people who have, not shown up. And, because I guess people start to think, "Well, I guess I don't really need to spend that much money this weekend in order to go to eat that food. And,
Yeah.
and so, it's one thing to have, like, a $10 charge for a last minute cancellation or something like that. It's another thing to have to prepay and not be able to, and
Yeah.
not be able to escape it, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm. Yeah, I think here mostly they're prepaid, and then if you have a drink or something, add something to the meal, you get a bill for that.
Right, for those
But
special meals, but
for those
this is
special
what I'm
meals.
talking about is
Oh, wow.
um,
Just
the
the
ordinary
evening.
meal
Yeah.
that you would have at that restaurant.
Yeah. We have a couple
Yeah.
places like that here, and, you know, I don't usually like everything. Like there'll be, like you said, 7 courses and there'll be a couple things that I'm just not interested in eating. I would rather, I don't mind ordering prefix in a restaurant, but I want to be able to substitute that kind of.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, we have a
Yeah.
brand new coffee bar here in Ann Arbor that has a little bit of food, and they've just scheduled their first special dinners, and it was $65 and it sold out in an hour, which probably tells them they're not charging enough. But they
Enough.
decided to do a second seating, and so they're gonna do 6 to 8 and then 8 to 10. And I think it's $10 more if you want, the beef or whatever. And that's
Uh-huh,
fine. I mean, under $100, as a special event, I can probably justify because I would pay that for a baseball ticket, So,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
but for me, I mean, I go grocery shopping and, so $40 is a bag of or 2 bags of groceries. For 2 bags of
Mhm,
groceries, I can eat for a few days. So I have to make the
mhm,
calculation of how much
mhm.
how much can I spend versus the same money spent on groceries?
Right. And I still have that feeling so often that this is way more food than I want.
Mhm.
And, I and you have no other choice. I was someone's guest. I went to have brunch at a very famous brunch place in New Orleans, and there was a fixed price.
Uh-huh.
This is the minimum you could spend,
Yeah.
and then you learned what you could get for those things,
Uh-huh.
all of which was way more than I was ever going to eat,
Right.
and that was like $95.
Yeah.
And so if you decided, "I really just want a hard-boiled egg and some toast," then, you still were paying $95 for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And then they had higher price menus with lots of crab and other kinds of things, but the lowest price you could pay was just a lot for I mean, it was not that it was a whole lot for the amount of food you got, it's just
Mhm.
that you just needed to have some alternative if you couldn't possibly eat that much food.
Yeah.
So I asked about it because I know the owners of the restaurant and not at the table, but later
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
asked about it and they said if they can't make less than that per person. They
Oh,
just can't.
yeah.
And they can't operate, and so that's your choice. But they still expect you to tip and all of that besides.
Mhm.
So it's it's a balance, but it's it it's something that makes it very hard for a lot of people to really go out to eat, and you can understand why people are eating at McDonald's or other places like that because they don't call it a value meal because people don't care about how much it costs,
Right.
they call it that because it's people are looking for something that they can afford, and it may not be the healthiest thing, but it's not necessarily healthy either to eat something that's full of cream and, butter and all those other good things that you're paying for at a restaurant.
So I wanna tell you, I was thinking about that when you just said value meal. We have a chain in the in Michigan, and I think they're in other states too, called Olga's. And there was a lady named Olga, and she kind of adapted gyros and things like that, sort of Mediterranean food, to make it approachable by people that didn't want to go to like a Greek restaurant or a Lebanese restaurant or whatever. And
Uh-huh,
so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Olga's has specials. And the one that I like the most is Monday nights, and you
uh-huh.
get your choice of a three cheese Olga. It's like pita bread with a spread and tomatoes and cheese, or a vegetarian one, which is veggies and the spread, and it's all rolled up, and then a salad or soup. You get a choice of a side dish. That's $5. And
Oh,
then
wow,
another night they have the original Olga, which has meat in it, and that's $5. And then
wow.
Wednesday night it's soup and salad, and you get soup and salad for $5. And then
Oh,
they have kids eat free on Sunday. Well, I just
okay.
love that Monday $5 special. It's kind of
Of
like,
course,
even if
yeah.
I can't afford anything, like the check didn't come in or something, I can still cobble $5 together and get a
Uh-huh.
very tasty little salad and a little sandwich. And it's kind of like they're not making any money on me, but if somebody brings their family to the restaurant, they will make money on those people. So I think it all works out for them, and the goodwill that they've accumulated is just
Oh,
enormous.
I'm sure that's
Yeah.
extraordinary, yes. So I have to tell you that I'm on my hotspot, and I'm
o-
getting a notice that it's
Yeah.
about to shut down
Okay.
because I've used up all the battery, and,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I'm
And I think
sorry.
something just happened to my picture too, so maybe I'm running
Yeah, you
out of
lost
juice as well. So,
right.
all right. So I think we'll call it for the evening, and please stay tuned for our next live, and we'll be sharing the date for it. But the topic is going to be our lives in food. And it's based on a wonderful podcast called Rosebud, which is hosted by Giles Brandreth. And I would highly recommend that you check out the Rosebud podcast, because we're going to try to do our version of the Rosebud podcast. And the last thing I wanted to share was, if y'all read the newsletter and I mentioned Smart Water and how they are one of the brands that is involved in The Devil Wears Prada too. This is the sweater from The Devil Wears Prada, and I just wanted to thank Smart Water for sending me the sweater. So thank you all for coming, and we will see you in a few weeks. Take care.
Right, and please let us know
Yes,
about any, ideas you have about what you'd like us to talk about, and what is the best time for you, because now we've done it in the morning, the afternoon, and the evening, and, we're just trying to see what's most convenient for people.
that's right. So thank you all, and have a great weekend, and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers, including you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you.